All right, so let's now take you back to the virtual memorial service for the former CEO of the Nelson Mandela Foundation, a struggle activist, author, and civil society leader, Achmat Dangor.
And he called me the night before to tell me this is what he's going to say. And I met him at school the next morning, and I sat in the front row with him. And as per usual, the school started the assembly with a hymn. And on that particular morning, it was, "Lord, make me an instrument of your peace." And he looked at me and he said, "Forget about the speech." He was going to talk to the girls about book week and the importance of reading. Instead, he stood up and he spoke to the girls about the importance of using their talents to become instruments of peace, of hope, of courage, and encouraging them to find their true meaning. My dad used his talents every day to become an instrument of peace and an instrument of hope. He was a remarkable human being who saw in others what they did not see in themselves. He always believed that everyone had the potential inside of themselves to do better, to aim higher. He was one of the kindest and gentlest people that I knew. It was a privilege to have known him and a privilege to have called him my father. His legacy lives on through his novels and his poetry. But beyond that, his legacy lives on through his kindness. It lives on in the many lives that he touched with his kindness and his gentleness. I will always remember his smile. And I'll always remember the fact that no matter where Dad was in the world, he always made time to listen. He was the first person I would call when something really bad happened. And he was the first person I would call when I had something really amazing to say. I will miss his quiet wisdom and his comforting silence. To Audrey, I would like to say, thank you for taking such good care of my dad. He knew he was loved. Thank you.
Hello everyone, I'm Zachary, Achmat Dangor's son. I'd like to start this off by saying that my father was the best man I've ever known. He was so intelligent and so kind and so forgiving. For the past week, I have been stressing over what I should say today. I realized that all I needed to do was speak from the heart, that it doesn't matter because my dad wouldn't care if I sounded sophisticated. He would just want me to be me. He was special. My dad was the Michael Jordan of my world. Dad was the best to ever do it. There was no one like him, and there will never be anyone like him. I know it's a cliche to say that your father is your hero, but he really was my hero. Something special about him was that he was quiet, yet his presence was so loud. My greatest memories with him are in the car on the way home from school. He would tell me incredible stories about his youth, and when he told them, I realized how much of an incredible storyteller he was. My dad taught me so much. One of the most amazing things was that he would teach me so much by just being him. He didn't even need to try. I loved making my dad happy or making him laugh. All I ever wanted was to make my parents proud. I loved showing my dad my report card and him being proud of how well I did. The happiest I have ever seen my dad was when I told him I loved a book that I had just read. He always wanted me to love reading. I remember telling him that I had just read To Kill a Mockingbird and I loved it, and he was so happy. I also remember trying to write a book when I was 10. I wrote 4 chapters and I got tired. Earlier this year, he found it on his computer and showed it to me. He loved it and he wanted me to continue. He was always so happy when he was reading or writing. To be very honest, I feel quite sorry for people who never got the pleasure of meeting my dad. There are not enough adjectives in the world to describe how wonderful he was. Another amazing thing about my dad was that he was so humble. He wasn't arrogant, and he didn't care what people thought of him. I'm actually quite surprised that my dad didn't brag about himself 24/7 as he was so accomplished. It would be impossible to fill my dad's shoes. I'd like to end this off by saying that you're lucky that I have a time limit, because I could go on for hours about what an incredible man he was. I love you, Dad, and I want you to know that if you are listening right now, you can rest. You don't need to worry about waking up early in the morning to take me to school. You don't need to worry about the countless things that you have to do in a day. You can rest, and you do deserve a rest. I love you so much. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Those were beautiful reflections. Thank you very much. I want to now call on someone who has been in my life because of Achmat, mainly. Achmat inviting me first time to the Luthuli House, and the first person that we had to meet with was Major Duarte, who is the sister to Ntate Dangor, and also the Deputy Secretary General of the ANC.
Good afternoon. After so much has been said about Achmat today, the book I love the most that Achmat wrote is Kafka's Curse. And I was saying to Audrey the other day that I think I've lost a few of his books. People come home and they take what they need. But this one didn't leave. And the best way I can describe Achmat is how he describes Majnun in Kafka's Curse. Majnun is both name and madness. Yes, Anna, remember that story I told her about the tragic lovers, Layla and Majnun, a fairy tale, of course, embellished and embroidered and impregnated with meaning until it became a myth. All such tales lie a little, without any malicious intent. It is noble, I suppose, to use the gift of storytelling, that peculiar power only humans have, as far as I know, to create a whole day of life from a strand of fact. For us as children, Achmat and my mom and Mohammed were the breadwinners in our family, and they described us as the children when they talked about us. And many a day, I have to tell you that Achmat couldn't cook anything, but he made the best jam sandwiches for lunch every day. We had the same jam sandwiches, and his description of it was very interesting. He says, this sandwich is clever food. It will taste like honey and melt in your mouth, the same every single day, and that was beautiful. Our brother was the most beautiful person we knew, inside and out. He had a way of making us laugh despite great adversity in our lives. We were poor. We had no luxury. We had no holidays. But our holiday was as a family, and our holiday was talking to each other. We have a family sibling group, which became our holiday in the last couple of months, a very funny group. I went over the messages the other night, and I must say I howled with laughter, because there was a moment when we were discussing the water crisis in South Africa, and Achmat was very simple. He said, so everybody says water is necessary for life, but you build dams and you build a pipe and then you don't do reticulation to the communities alongside the road. And so this is what we need to do. Achmat taught us to be activists, that you don't sit around and look at poverty and lament it. You sit around, understand what people are going through, and do something about it. And if you don't have the courage to lift your hand to do something about it, then you absolutely are wasting the time of the poor. For him, development was a must. And if you were going to make a change in this country, then you had to look at infrastructure that was valuable infrastructure to the poor, not infrastructure that helped only the wealthy to move around from one castle to the other, but to make sure that the poor were able to have mobility that they could afford, housing that they could afford, and hopefully the creation of jobs through using development as a tool to help the economy to run. Achmat was gentle, kind, but very incisive. And often he openly said what he wanted to say without fear and favor. And I think he was the most fearless man I knew. He had courage beyond anything. And I remember with the HIV and AIDS crisis in our country, he did not stand back. He stood up against what he thought was a policy that would take us down a path of ruin, and he intentionally made sure that everybody understood that the only way to go was through not going with the ignorance that was abound at the time, but helping people to understand this virus, this disease, and what it would do to people, and that people here needed help, and they needed funding, and he wasn't afraid to ask for that funding from various organizations. So he was fearless, and he made life a little bit difficult for some of us who were in the NEC of the ANC, but I didn't mind. I was proud of my brother for the stand that he took, because it was the right thing to do. I also think I need to say that the legacy of Achmat is in his wonderful children. Zachary, Zain, Justine are truly a living testament to the kind of person that Achmat was. I need to tell you that Achmat made us read.
All right, so we need to come out of that virtual memorial service of the late struggle activist Achmat Dangor. You have his sister there, Jessie Duarte, sharing her fond memories of his late brother. Unfortunately, due to time constraints, that's where we have to leave it with today's edition of SA Today. But as they put it nicely in Afrikaans, we'll see you tomorrow. Salang handle.